Welcome to the People in Legal podcast. This is the Law and Beyond show where we talk about everything there is in the expanding legal universe, that is law, technology and compliance, and academia. I am your host, Chantal McNaught. I'm a PhD researcher researching how lawyers navigate the conflicts between law as a profession and law as a business, and I also author the fully innovative luxury newsletter on LinkedIn. And today is a special episode featuring both Russell Smith and Toby Taylor. Russell Smith is a serial entrepreneur who has been in the digital identity space for over a decade.
Just lower that, it's like nearly a decade. Yeah.
Russell cultivates relationships easily, with relationships across leading organisations in the United Kingdom, Australia and New Zealand, and he brings a unique energy, as you will find throughout this episode, mixing creativity, design, strategy and finance. Toby Taylor is a recognised expert in anti-money laundering compliance across legal, with a career spanning the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and is now the General Manager of APLYiD Australia. Both Russell and Toby are joining us today because they're passionate about technology and how it can help rather than hinder law firms in their compliance with anti-money laundering regimes. This is a special episode brought to you by APLYiD, and all editorial control remains with People and Legal. And today's date is the 28th of April 2026. And I date it because the news is travelling fast. And before we get into the questions and welcoming you both on the show into this wonderful panel format here, I want to bring a bit of a news item that's come across my desk about a New Zealand firm that's recently been fined $60,000 for non-compliance. In fact, they were obstructing the Department of Internal Affairs, which is the New Zealand equivalent of AUSTRAC, because they had been obstructing the investigation. They were found not to do their their risk assessment, nor did they have a compliance program. So it's really interesting to find that a bar now has been set as well. But that's really put a wet blanket on our conversation.
Note. Yeah. And one of the things we want to make sure we do here is make people panic less. Oh, 60 grand. It's a good start.
Well,
who was it? Do you know them, Toby?
I do know them. I saw the article, and the first thing was, oh my God, they better not be a client of ours, but we're in the clear.
Okay.
I won't name it. We'll be friendly, but Fairbairn Hamilton, make a bit as well.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
There's lots.
And I thought that it was interesting to see it in the news, however, because there's a lot of uncertainty. And I feel as if, especially in Australia, that's the last of the OECD countries to get tranche 2 obligations. So, you can count.
Nearly didn't happen.
Yeah, there you go.
It was very close.
And we will talk about that as well on the show. So I wanted to start, though, with the forever youthful Toby. Can you tell us more about your journey from banking into AML and how your career has landed you here, talking about solutions for small law firms across compliance for anti-money laundering obligations?
I think first, when you put it like that, it's not where I thought I would be before I started my career. Many years in AML, but here we are, and we love it. I sure can, though. So even before then, I was always that guy at school that was, drop shipping hats from China and all that sort of stuff, and organising random little concerts and doing all of that. Very much the entrepreneurial brain, I suppose. And then throughout university, I studied finance and economics and went for the more, I would say, boring classic path of working in one of the major banks in New Zealand in their grad program.
You just start slagging off working for a bank now.
Yeah, basically. Look, some still out there, says it all. But that was what I thought was, I suppose, the right path, if we put it that way, was to go down that route. It was the safe, secure thing. And then after a couple months, fair to say I was very, very bored. And I could see I wouldn't love the next few years, mostly from being, one of thousands and thousands of people and not really having a chance to actually make an impact. So I went online this is back in Auckland in New Zealand, and I just searched for the smallest companies that were hiring. That was basically the one condition. And companies in tech, really. I'd always been more interested in that, which then led me to the other
Me.
man on the call. Not at APLYiD, but at, you mentioned Serial Entrepreneur before, a different company Russell owns. Used to be called Move Me, is now called Renty. And then I jumped ship and joined in a sales role over there, which led me to, man, what was I? 4 months there, and then APLYiD was kind of just beginning. I don't think the company had even formally been formed, and I was then just kind of doing whatever needed to be done across one of the many companies, to be honest, which was trying to figure out how on earth we were going to get this product out to the legal market. This was sort of start of 2018, just before the reforms actually changed in New Zealand. It was October 2018, I believe.
Is that 7 years ago now?
Yeah, 8 years ago we're coming up to. God.
Yeah.
Yeah, when all of the law firms were going to be impacted. And that was where, I was doing half my time in APLYiD, and then that actually kicked off and that started. And I was, I think, full-time employee with like sole focus in APLYiD #1, really, aside from obviously the founders.
You're still #1, Toby.
Thanks, Russell.
Some days. Funny though, isn't it? When you think about back then in 2018, the way that the government rolled out New Zealand, wildly different to the way that Austrac's rolling out Australia. So it went legal, accounting, real estate over a period of 3 years, and they each had like a year to get themselves sorted, as opposed to here's the firm deadline, everybody gets sorted by that date. But big hats off to Austrac in the way that they're massively supporting the industries, because when it happened in New Zealand, I think there might have been the odd conference here and there, like small conference, but that was about it. There was no guides published by Austrac, and Brendan's out there really getting out there trying to educate both consumers and legal, accounting, real estate. So
Brendan
it was a
being
slog.
The CEO of Austrac.
Yeah, Brendan, he is. It was a really great chat with him on a podcast really recently. It was very informative.
Yeah, we'll have to track that link in the show notes as well. And that's a really, I love the illuminating pathway of your career, Toby, as well, because we talk a lot about careers on the People in Legal podcast generally too, because I'm the same, although it took me a fair bit longer to realise that I needed to get out. So I think that says more about my intelligence than it should. So it's like hats off to you in discovering within a few months what you were about and what you wanted out of life, and the impact. But Russell, I like how you brought in the comparison from New Zealand and Australia. And I do want to go back, though, to that time where Toby was #1 employee of APLYiD. Could you tell us the truth?
Absolutely not. Depends what you're going to ask me.
What was your motivation? All right, well, tell us two truths and a lie then about your motivation of setting up APLYiD, and where it kind of motivated you from going from Move or Renty, which coincidentally I have also used. So I use both of your products.
We'll do a little Renty plug in a minute. That's interesting.
And what you've been learning across the countries that you now operate in.
So going back only a smattering of years ago, I arrived in New Zealand in 2012, I think. Somewhere around there. And if you can't tell, I'm from the UK. Sorry about that, everybody in Australia and New Zealand. So I've never really loved working in corporate. I mean, I've had some great jobs, worked for some really great businesses. With that urge to want to do something bigger and broader. So, I've worked for lots of corporates, and it gives you that moniker to be able to then do more. You build up those networks and connections, but you're just a bit of a number when you're sort of junior in these businesses, Lots of great ideas and lots of shocking ones too, but, Then I started a small business in New Zealand that was nothing to do with identity or AML. I won't go into all that one; it's quite boring. But I started. I remember watching the Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather fight way back in whenever that was, 2016. And I wanted to put a bet on, and the only way I could do it was to do it through an app through Bet365. And at the time, I went through a biometric identity flow, and then I was like, "Wow, that was really good. Like, that was cool." And then my brain just went off a million directions. While the fight was on, I was like Googling ways to be able to find out how to do that sort of stuff, and connected up with a bunch of businesses and started. So I started biometric technology for New Zealand, but I was pretty close to being one of the first organizations to get into facial recognition technology to onboard customers. Started a company with a friend of mine who that business is still running, and we introduced that to all the banks of New Zealand. So both Toby and I have done banking in a different way for New Zealand, and sold that business to my friend who's still proudly and supporting those banks in that space. But moving into the banking space, it was getting back into corporate and big brands and big business and slow. And I'm like, how do we take that amazing experience that banks can afford to do and invest in and then bring it to real estate, legal, accounting, and smaller finance companies? And that's where Toby and I, who he was working on the renty side, were like, this has got something interesting. This is a small to medium business platform for those businesses. And we took all that banking tech and then really nailed that space from a New Zealand point of view. Lots of law firms, lots of real estate companies, lots of accounting, small finance just recognized the importance of saying, I want to onboard a customer, it can't be crap. And it has to be compliant, but if it's crap, I'm going to have to deal with it. And that was the message that we got across. And what was the second part of your question, Chantal?
It was around what you have learnt having expanded into other countries as well.
Yeah. It's probably going to be another question later on, and I'll expand on it more. I'd say that I've learned that there's two ways that you can look at this. Panic and fear and worry that you're going to get it wrong, or dip into it, spend a bit of time thinking about, imagine if you were the customer that was going to be onboarded by your business and go through that process, right? On all the different platforms and all the different ways and all those different things, and pick the one that makes you feel like, oh, like I did with the Bet365 thing. If you have that moment of, oh, that wasn't so bad, and then you wrap around all a load of other things, which I'm sure we'll get into later, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's actually not that hard.
I love that, and because since my relocation from Auckland to Brisbane, I've had several conversations that there is panic. So, do you think
not like
that,
panic, like
it's more, you know what?
That'd be way overkill.
It's less scream and more, can we ignore this? Like it's less like, oh, I fear that this is going to be so big. I'm just going to delay until I have the time, or I can just pay somebody to have this problem for me. And is that something that you have seen before in the UK and New Zealand?
Yeah, not anymore though. Like at this particular point in time, and I'm going to be careful how I word this. There are organizations and company. There's lots of people that can benefit from creating panic, including the media. You know, a boring, oh, it'll all be fine story is never going to hit the media. They'll be looking for this is going to cost Australia billions of dollars in extra money that we don't have, and it's on the sectors to pay for it and the consumer to pay for it and blah, blah, blah. But it's actually really, really crucial that it gets done given what it's supposed to do. So I think the fear and the panic and the anxiety everyone's feeling today, anxiety by whether you should watch our monster videos if you ever get the chance, I think is a short-term thing. It's all going to be done and dusted in the next 4 to 6 weeks when July the 1st rolls around. So brush that off. You can't get away with not doing it because it's actually you're going to become a potential target if you don't do it. Like if it's very simple these days. When New Zealand did this, there was no technology. We had to build something for the market. Like you guys got all the benefit of seeing this being done before. So if I go back to New Zealand or the UK, see if you agree with this, Toby. Nobody's peddling fear anymore, right? Everybody's peddling way better processes, better tech, AI, all these different ways that you can make that journey cheaper, more efficient, and better is absolutely what will happen beyond August. So look for those businesses that are already talking about that now. Don't look at the ones that say, if you don't get this done today, you're going to have a $60,000 fine. Watch out. That's just ridiculous.
This is true, and you're right. Like, this is the first time that I've seen in the New Zealand legal media about AML. Like, and you're right. It's always negative. It's never positive. Toby, do you have anything to add around like how to turn that? You know, if you've got a leader in a firm feeling that sense of panic, that like bile coming up, like, oh my God, I don't think I have time to work out what my systems and processes are. Like, you know, Russell's already mentioned the monster videos, but is there what other supports and things are there that you've seen work?
I mean, look, the absolute 101 is kind of the only way is through. You know, the people who just kick this down the curb because it's scary, it's not going to be magically any easier starting at 3 months later. So it's a challenging one to start because nobody wants to start it. But getting smaller little wins in the lead up to it is only going to make life easier when you do absolutely get there. And I think we did see a lot of that when you talk about what we learned from New Zealand and UK and other countries. Like a lot of the Australian businesses, and I'll kind of have, this why do we have to do it? Is it the government's job? I don't remember that being as much of a conversation back in New Zealand. There was a bit more of an acceptance of like well, this does kind of suck, but we've got to do it. So how are we going to do it and do it well? As opposed to like, I shouldn't have to do it. And then led to people creating fantastic processes and actually getting ahead of this thing. Because like the sad reality is it's not going away. I do think though it's much easier than everybody thinks it is, which is probably quite a large statement. It depends on the nature of the law firm and the types of services they provide and the type of business that they run.
But you have to say that, hey, Toby, like disclaimer, it does, depend.
Yeah.
But it really is. I think that's a big part of it, that it's been built up in everybody's minds to be bigger than it is. But the reality is that, like, I think the difference between Australian and New Zealand law firms is that New Zealand law firms, from a trust accounting to take trust money, you don't need to have a street address. In Queensland in particular, that's been a requirement for decades. So there's so many things that I think are already stuff that firms in Australia do that then would be covered in managing the sorts of risks for the firm to be used to launder money or finance the proliferation of weapons. But Russell, I think you were going to disagree with Toby for a moment then.
A little bit. I generally do that. I guess I was probably more at some of the I was probably more at some of the DIA conferences early doors where they were sort of talking about things in the market, and there's a lot of people in the back rooms shouting, why do we have to bloody do this? Why is the government not paying for this? Blah, 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 blah. You're like, actually, it wouldn't make sense anyway that would, the way that it worked from a government paying for it. It's not really about that. But I think the back to what you were saying about the nature of what you are as a company, it is easy if what you do is very, very simple onboarding your customers. If you are dealing with large international companies, corporations, whatever, it does become a little bit more complicated. But you just have to figure out what you are as a business and then start to lean into what's available to you in terms of tech and support. But it isn't still going to go away. It is happening. It's already happened. Lots and lots of the fines and bits and pieces that's going on in New Zealand, there are lots more than that one that you just referenced before. That one that was referenced before, I think they dug their heels into not just to avoid doing it, they were trying to really hiding.
Yeah.
But actually, simplistically, you can do this And Austrac's not expecting you to be the private detectives here. They want you to just report the things that you think are suspicious, but carry on with your jobs. So find the ways to find tech and whatnot to be able to make that still remain simple. And then the other side to it, you don't really have to get involved in the sticky side of it. You just have to let them do their job.
Yeah.
And it's not that expensive. It's really not.
It's not, and it's also like really good just business risk management. And this is the thing that I think gets a little bit missed, and delusional optimist right here, around it. It's confrontational because lawyers don't typically get trained on managing risks. We get trained on identifying risks. But how the majority of risks are managed are usually 2 out of the 4 when it comes to mitigation strategies. Either you avoid the risk or you use a liability clause and make it somebody else's problem. And that's the go-to from a lawyer's perspective. But the other 2, which are actually more important when it comes to things like anti-money laundering, when it is about working out, well, what's my risk appetite, and assessing impact versus likelihood. And I like to go around the room on this as well, as that, Australia doesn't typically get earthquakes. And so going, in a Brisbane law firm around the room, like what if we're talking about a, 5 and higher Richter scale earthquake, which the likelihood of that is, as they say in the game, non-zero, but the impact would probably be catastrophic because there's no buildings built in Brisbane that could withstand that kind of
There'd be
earthquake.
no Brisbane left.
There'd be no Brisbane left. What would you do? And it was really interesting when I ran this thought experiment at a firm recently, that the majority of people in that room were like, well, we realistically wouldn't do anything because it's a non-zero likelihood. And only one of them said, well, I would just double check my insurance policy if it covers earthquakes. And so that was a really great example of how there is different risk appetites of, doing nothing versus what opportunities that you have to do that. And that's the confrontational part about AML, is that it actually confronts the lawyers and the leadership of these firms to actually look at what they believe in what's going on in their business to take action, but then to sit in that quiet discomfort of knowing, well, there's an impact here, but the likelihood assessment. And that practice, yes, it's going to take time, but I think it's hugely beneficial from a business perspective, because I'm talking to 2 entrepreneurs here. You do that every day. You're making decisions that go, if we've made the wrong decision, well, that's us in the hole.
Pivot.
Pivot. If you suddenly discover that half your clients are Russian,
decisions. What are you talking about?
You probably should think, maybe this is a business risk for us, and we should start marketing in other
They're
areas.
Russian to buy the product. Thank you very much. The other thing is... Go on, Toby.
I had one the other day that was... And this is a reminder of why it is a good thing. People who were saying to me on a call, like, oh, I know loads of my clients are dodgy, but like, if they pay the bills, I don't really care. And that is, don't get me wrong, that's not the consensus, of course. We speak to many people, and that is rare, but it's real.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
so it's not necessarily you, it's the firm down the road.
Exactly right. And so that's where it becomes something of benefit. But I want to pivot back to something that Russell mentioned earlier, which was around the experience. So, coming from that experience of making a bet where, the business interests of the business is to ensure that the experience of your onboarding is as smooth as possible, so that you feel comfortable using that platform to make your bets, which is using your money to do things. This actually hits really close to home on a second product, which is the APLYiD product that I have used as a client of a law firm in New Zealand. And this is not, you did not pay for this testimonial. This was just my experience. And I felt that the APLYiD platform was really straightforward. you use your phone. Like I actually started the experience on the desktop, and then it says, no, you got to get your phone out because we need to use your camera to like do your whole three-dimensional face biometric data check. To check that, which was pretty cool. But what was a poor experience was how the law firm put me through to my identity check, and that was more or less, I'm paraphrasing here, but we've got this extra step that we need to do now that you've given us your legal instructions. We have to actually confirm some things, and here's a link, and make sure you click on it. And I know it's really painful. Yeah, exactly. It's like apologizing for what? The client does not need to know. When I opened up a bank account with a New Zealand bank, or actually it's the same experience in Australia, they don't tell you that the identity checks, like what it's for. They don't apologize for it. They just say this is part of the process. And in a lot of ways, it is an opportunity, I feel, and I would like to get your inputs. It is that opportunity for providing a great business experience that then builds client loyalty. Because you need, from a lawyer's perspective, you need clients to trust you so that they can give you good instructions. Toby, I want to start with you. From how much of the perspective of the influence on that experience what does it have on the bottom line ultimately?
It's a really interesting one, because a lot of firms who look at it just think kind of an ID check is an ID check. And it's kind of the same, whatever you go through, and what they look at is more the other side of the equation often, in all of their internal process for whoever it is in the firm. The paralegals possibly processing a lot of this. And that, don't get me wrong, it's the right thing to look at in many ways. But a lot of the, I guess, untraceable cost is when that ID check is challenging and the client doesn't do it because it is challenging. Then they're going back to the law firm saying it's not working. They're going back and forth. They're having a conversation. They're figuring out why, yada, yada, yada. And that's just ultimately more and more time. And when it's on the bottom line, it is how much time is being spent on AML, which is not in the magical 6-minute increments and build out. And if you don't have that great client experience, that time just goes up and up and up, really. Or even if it's who knows, if it's a really rushed file that needs to be done. I even bought a property recently which had a very short due diligence period. Obviously, used a client of APLYiD. This was in New Zealand, and I was sitting on my couch in Sydney. They sent me a text, bang, all done in a minute. So then we could actually open that straight away and then go and start working on the case.
Yeah.
But then also to do that, long story, in New Zealand, I was using my pension funds, so I had to verify my ID for the pension fund. And to do that, I had to go and get 2 documents certified by a lawyer, which then by the time we were back and forth, getting appointments sorted, all of that, took me like 4 days maybe to do. Sent it in, they actually wrote the wrong words on it. So then I had to go back again. So it was like a 7 or 8 day process versus 1 minute. Which, like, if at the start of it, because I had a really quick DD period, that lawyer had said to me, oh, you need to go get your ID certified, I would have just gone to a different one, quite literally, because it was that much of a turnaround. And then it's not just like a little bit of time wasted, it was the fee that I paid them of however many $1,000. So
what I always find fascinating in this space is that I'm just getting the lights back on. There we go. Obviously not moving around enough. Got to get my steps up. I find it fascinating because if we were in the world of, I don't know, telco or finance or something, it costs money to acquire a customer, right? Let's say you went to, I don't know, Telstra or something, and you went to onboard and you went, so what we want you to do is we want you to stand on your head, spin around 4 times, do a couple of cuckoos, then go out the door, go and see a bob down the road, get something sorted, and then come back, and then we got you this amazing package. The cost to acquire customers, that's real, right? So if you're onboarding cost of a customer, it matters to you that your brand is represented well in terms of what you're doing to onboard Toby or whatever as part of a process, whatever that may be. I urge whoever's responsible for that at the law firm gets involved in the conversations with these AML providers, because it's your brand. And you are going to be the ones that people are going to go, oh, don't go to such and such down the road because it's a nightmare. They have to get you to go to the justice of the peace, or the tech doesn't work, so you're sitting there spinning around. I went to use a vehicle hire company the other day. I want to name and shame them on here because they have annoyed me quite a lot, but I won't. And being in the biometric space for 10 years, I sat there and it would not take the back of my driver's license. And I did it 3 times. I obviously know what I'm doing with this stuff,
Yeah.
and it just wouldn't work. So I messaged all the people I know on LinkedIn to say I just don't understand it, and they just accepted it. I'm like, I just didn't take the car in the end because the car was gone. It disappeared from the platform. I'm like, do you know what? You've just lost a
Yeah.
customer. You've just lost your customer $3,000 for the long period of time it's going to rent a car. It's like, think about it. Would
Yeah.
you accept the level of the way that it worked for you if you and your partner were onboarding for a property sale, or you're starting a company, or whatever it is you're doing? If it's crap, don't buy it and take it through the ringer. Put it through the team internally and go, hey, we're thinking about getting this product. What do all of you guys do? All of these companies like us will let you stress test the platform, no problem. It won't cost you anything, and if they tell you it will, then don't choose it anyway. I'm going to make myself super popular target on the back of my neck, but it's true. We're all here to make revenue
Yeah.
from this. This is what we do as a business, but we are level-headedly trying to make it as simple as possible for the customers. And there's a
I
lot more to it
appreciate,
than just the onboarding.
and I really appreciate that, Russell, because I think we're all kind of inundated by this mediocrity, or as I love the 2014, no, 2024 word of the year, and shitification. So everything has just gotten worse,
You said we
and
weren't allowed to say shit on here.
well, it's in a portmanteau, so it's academic. The the it's I really like as well how you mentioned other sectors, because it, like, I was wondering about the whole argument of can you convert the sorts of things that help you be compliant and make sure that you've identified your clients correctly, can that actually be of a net positive for your business? Is like I'm wondering, like, is that true, or is that just marketing spin?
Well, I think the majority of organizations in this space, in the professional services space, charge a cost back to their customers for AML. And it's not an outrageous charge. They don't go, right, it's $1,000 to onboard you as a customer. That's just crazy. And if you think back to what I was just saying about the experience, if the experience was actually quite enjoyable, and the law firm sort of put a bit of branding around it, said, hey, we've chosen this onboarding experience because we care that it matters to you. It's very quick and easy. There's some of the things you want to look for. La 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 la. Get stuck. Call that provider who can help you through the process if there's anything wrong at all. And we do that. Just a little plug for the business, but so you don't have to worry about being that biometric technology, know-it-all. And then when it comes to then passing that cost back to the customer, like, I don't mind the $40, $50, whatever it is I'm going to be charged. It's part and parcel of the new world order. It's what we have to do. I have to do it in any other company, storage, hire, banking, finance. I do it anyway. So I'm kind of used to it. The customers aren't going to go, I'm not signing up for you, law firm, because of this ID check that you're going to make me do. If they say that, A, they might be dodgy anyway. But B, it's not going to happen. They're not going to say that. Just make sure that you educate them through the process, and that process is nice, and you do have the right to charge for it. It's your hourly rates, and you can. Some don't, and they want to just
Yeah.
absorb the costs, and that's entirely up to you as a business. I don't think that's really too much of a challenge.
And that, like, you kind of touched on it there with the other sectors. The client probably will be familiar with it. We speak to quite a lot who think this is going to be, new world order. But we have rental car companies and storage facilities and all sorts of different sectors who are already using this tech.
Dog walking businesses.
Yeah,
There we
and
go.
they're not required to have
Yeah.
this sort of stuff in place.
No.
So there's clearly a business reason for it. We can talk about AML all day, but for the 4 listeners that are hanging on, one
Three
of
of them
them
are
being
us.
my mum.
Very Germany.
Yeah.
we're like, I think we'll just like have a little bit of a summary on that, where there isn't really a need to panic. There is a need to take action. There's some great education pieces. It has been mentioned as well. There's some videos that APLYiD have. I believe you guys have a free learning platform as well. There's heaps of free learning platforms.
Policy writing tools, all of that stuff.
You're kind of drowning in it. So consider yourselves lucky. I also was at the pub the other day about just catching up with a lawyer friend, and there was a whole bunch of lawyers that were friends of friends and stuff, and they all mentioned as well about that feeling that we said at the beginning of the episode too, around that they feel like it's doing the government's job. But I think we've already covered that, where this is more like, no, this can't be done by the government because there's literally a data black hole. We don't know how many transactions are going through lawyers. So it's statistical collection, really. And the other is that there is a net business benefit. So regardless of what platform or product you choose, it is about
choose APLYiD.
Educating yourself. Of course, it's in the interests of APLYiD, who did lovely support this episode as well, which helps our editing and production team, which is me and David and Grace. So I have these conversation cards, and we'll keep it short. It's something at sight unseen.
Magic.
You don't know what topic. Not magic, and I can't shuffle. I'm a terrible croupier. Look at this. I've spent about 2 hours max in a casino once. Not really my thing. So for both of you,
another hotspot for money launderers, by the way.
This is true. Which is why your experience with the bet agency was perfect. Russell, you first. Do you prefer text or call, and why?
Ooh. Well, can I ask who's on the other end of it?
Well, does that make a difference?
No, I think I do prefer text, which is weird, isn't it? I do like to talk a lot, as proven within the last 35 minutes. But yeah, I think I'm a texter. I'm an emoji guy. I like lots of emojis, and to customers too.
So
they love it or loathe it, but I don't.
Can I call as a text, like a heads up, like we're gonna have a synchronous conversation?
What do you want? I'm busy. Poo emoji.
What about you, Toby?
It's all situational. I think kind of the same as Russell. Like, you can just become more friendly. A call can be professional in some ways, depending on who it with. Text is just like you're talking to a friend and you forget actually it's a client. So it depends on the scenario, to be fair.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your enthusiasm, and demystifying the AML experience for law firms. We're going to put some information in the show notes, and give us a subscribe because it helps other listeners find the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chantal.
Thanks, Chantal.
You've been listening to the Law and Beyond show on the People and Legal podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing so you have notifications and it helps our audience find us. You can also find us on LinkedIn at People and Legal, and consider following me, Chantal McNaught, on LinkedIn to get your copy of the fully innovative luxury lawyer newsletter. And see you in the next episode.